Hi, welcome to this video if you're new here. My name is Hannah Grace Fletcher. I'm an aspiring author currently working on my very first novel project, Project Ace of Spades. Ace of Spades is a YA religious fantasy / science fiction novel, and it is a series. It has a trio, multi-POV. It deals with complications of grief, complex character relationships, complex parental relationships, pretty much every single complex thing that I could fit into this book. I don't know how I did it because, I go into these things thinking, you know what, I'm gonna write a happy book. No, I'm gonna wrench my heart out every day that I open this document. But anyway, if this is your first time seeing me, I am so excited you're here. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment down below what writing project you're working on at the moment and how that project is going. In this video, I actually came to you guys and I asked you guys what your writing questions were. Pretty much like a Q&A, except with writing related. Because I am actually a senior year English student. I'm currently working on my thesis and I feel like I've learned a lot about the writing process. Also, I need to preface all of this with saying that I am a young writer. I'm still learning. I would prefer that you listen to the greats out there, the ones that have been in their career for a long time, rather than me. But if you're looking for someone that is in the same space as you, in the same kind of place as you with your writing life, sometimes it's good to hear stuff from people that are at the same level as you. So yeah, that is kind of why I decided to make this video. But anyway, you guys really came through with your questions. If you commented on the post where I asked for writing questions, thank you so much. I will not be doing names in this video, but I am just so grateful that we had so many comments, so many great questions, and I can't wait to get into it. So our first question is going to be the hardest question that I answer tonight, and that is, in your opinion, what are some things that set good writers apart from bad writers and great writers apart from good writers? When I saw this question, I immediately thought to myself, how the heck am I going to answer that? But anyway, I would love to try. I have really been mulling over this, and one of the things that I found most difficult about this question was that it wasn't what makes good writing, it is what makes a good writer. Because I can easily answer the question of what makes good writing. I believe that the best writing out there will always have layers, will always have depth. It'll always say something and mean something else. There will always be something in between the lines that just creates this relationship between the writer and the reader and the characters that isn't just explicitly on the page. But as for what makes a good writer, that is a whole question in itself. I think writing is something that takes a lot of hard work. It is not easy. It takes a lot of time. It takes commitment. It takes devotion. It takes care for a project. And I think it's hard to talk about what makes a good writer unless we're talking about projects specifically. Because there can be projects out there that you would not be a good writer for. There can be projects out there that would be great for you as a writer. What matters is not your ability to just be a good writer. I think what really makes a good writer is just care for the project. And not even just care, because you can care a lot about something and then you can just not execute it well. But I think care and passion for what you're trying to say, and then on top of that, a commitment, a drive, just not to your characters themselves, but to actually communicating what they're going through. It's a lot different to have someone who is passionate about the idea of story and who is passionate about writing that story. It's a whole other act in itself, because you can imagine stories in your head all day long. You can think up situations, scenarios, and you might just love to have those in your head. And I don't think that's a bad thing. But it is a whole different thing to commit to a project, to write it down, to give it depth, to open yourself up, to empathize, to sit with your characters, to become your characters, to almost method act your book, to walk around, to think about your project constantly, to write whenever you have the chance. I think that that is what makes a great writer, is someone who has the emotional depth, who has the care for the specific story that they're working on, and has the drive and commitment and courage to have that story get told. Now, I don't know if that is the perfect answer to your question. I will get a bit into more craft things later because I do want to talk about craft, but because the question was specifically about a writer, I think that that is pretty much the best answer I can give. I will always say passion and commitment. The next question that I put on this list is also a hard one. I don't know why I decided to do this to myself, but I did. It is, what is the hardest or easiest part of editing and why? So I think that this depends on the person, but I'm gonna answer this from my point of view as a writer because, I mean, that's the only way I can answer it. I think when I went into editing, I went into it with a love and a care for the original version of the story. And I think the hardest thing for me has been separating the original version of the story from what it has the potential to become, and kind of like letting go of that old version. It's very scary to close a document and say, I'm going to start over. Then again, not every single draft that you do warrants an entire scrap of the old one and embrace of the new, but I think that it is important to understand that if you have an idea, if you have a story that is infused into you, that you care about, even if you were to delete your book on accident, that story is still there and you have the power to write it. I have considered over and over literally deleting, I'm not doing it for this project, but literally deleting projects on purpose because I don't have the ability to make new without feeling like I need to rely on what's there. I feel almost scared. I feel like my brain freezes up and I don't have the ability to do new. And I think, like I said before, the hardest thing about editing has been looking at what the story is and figuring out what it can be, and then figuring out the in-between steps to get there. Easiest part of editing? I think that there is no easy part to editing. Just joking, I will come up with something. Okay, it does say or easiest, so technically I wouldn't have to answer easiest. I think one of the easiest parts about editing, you could say from some perspectives, is that you already have a draft. You've already spent time with these characters. You already have an idea of, I like this, I don't like this, I know what I need to improve. Do I know how to do that? No. But you're able to have something that you're able to base off the future of your story on. So I think that that is easy. Besides that, I do not know, and this is not to knock storytelling. I just don't think there's much easy. There's hard and there's fun and there's passion, but I don't know if there's really anything that's easy. If you do have something that you're editing your book and you're like, hey, this is easy, please answer that down below because I have been struggling. No, I'm gonna be real with you. Y'all who are OGs on the channel know how much I thought I was gonna love editing and ended up hating it. But we're here. I love my story and I have commitment to it, so we are doing it. The next question is, how do you balance structure, like outlining, with discovery while drafting? I'm obsessed with this question because I, for the longest time, have heard the words like plotter and planter going around. And for me, I don't know if I've necessarily identified with either one of those at any point. I feel like when I go into a story, I plan out as much as I know. But if there are things that I don't know that aren't pressing, I won't plan them out. It was very easy with Project AOS. Because my story is based on another story, I knew what needed to happen. It was just taking the original form and doing it in an inspired way, finding a way to twist the inspiration in a way. So I already had big plot points. There was a journey book. I knew exactly where they were going every time they went somewhere. Did I know what that looked like? Did I know what was going to happen? Not necessarily. And I think another thing that's important to figure out is try to figure out your character's motivations. Try to figure out your character arcs. And I know that that's hard, but character arcs are so important because it affects what your character does. It affects the way that your book goes. And so I think it is most important to figure out what your character's motivations are, what is their want, what is their need, what are the big plot points that are going to occur in the story. And then in between those moments, you can have fun. You can discover how these things are going to come to be, because one of my favorite things about writing draft 1 of AOS was my ability to just open up my laptop and dream up another place, another location for my characters to go to, what that was going to look like, how they were going to go to the next place, how they were going to solve this problem. But I knew at the end of the day where my beginning was, where my end was, all of the big points in between, except the midpoint. We've had issues on this channel with the midpoint, but I knew where the characters were going, but I left room for how they were going to get there. The next question is, do you do one big writing block on the weekends or split them across the week? So I have tried both. In my life, currently, I am on the kick of just having a writing weekend, just working myself to the bone. To the bone during the week for classes, for work, for all my extracurriculars, just putting that all in the week and then having a nice weekend to just, hey, this is my writing day. I don't have to do anything today but write. And I think that that is such a nice feeling to just be able to say that today I don't have to worry about anything, because I have learned, I think that this is maturity, by the way, I have learned my boundaries. I have learned what things that are hard for me to get out of when I'm doing them. If I start editing a YouTube video, I will not want to stop till that YouTube video is finished. But writing and editing is different for me. It's not as easy for me to jump into it anymore because I've been doing it for so long and because of how difficult it is. So just putting off all the other things that I'm going to be like locked in on until other times, until later in the day where I can't just obsess over them all day because I have to go to bed, like understanding yourself. And so I've been really big on block weekends, but I have wanted to get more into interspersing throughout the week. I haven't had the time yet, but I do want to try it. And tell me if you guys are interested. I've been thinking about filming another Finding My Writing Routine video because that one was really fun to make, and I think, you know, as a student, my routine changes every semester. Okay, our last question for this section of the video is, how do you romanticize writing and incorporate it into your routine? Like I said before, I try to put it on weekends, and I try to do things that really make me happy, things that are really self-indulgent. I consider writing almost a part of my self-care routine. It's what I do to kind of rejuvenate myself, to remind myself of like what's important to me, and to just have time with my characters. I personally like to go work at a coffee shop all day, go walk at a park in between, just do a lot of fun things during that time. Another big thing, and this only applies to people that film, you need space and you need time with just you and your project. You cannot have a camera on you all the time, and I really got into that for a while, that every time I wrote I filmed because it was efficient. It killed two birds in one stone. It was a very easy way for me to do two of my hobbies at once. But just writing, just waking up early in the morning, putting on a good outfit, feeling good about yourself, going to a coffee shop, writing for a little bit, even if it's before you have other things to do later in the day, I think it's just important to like, especially, I just love to associate writing with other things that make me happy and to just like spend time doing it. I know that that doesn't work for everyone. I know that there are other things that you need to do in your life and you won't always have a whole free day. But I think just finding ways to make it something that you're happy about, like, oh my gosh, I'm gonna go to the park this morning, I'm gonna write, I'm just gonna have a really nice morning where I take care of myself, because I think writing to me has kind of become, okay, I've worked all week, now I get to spend time in my story. This is kind of like a self-care moment for me. I don't know if that makes sense, but that's kind of the way I see it. But anyway, I'm gonna take you guys to the next location of the video and answer a couple more questions. Bye! everyone, so we have a few more questions to answer. I'm actually filming this clip before the one that you just saw because it is about to get dark and I'm kind of filming this video on a time crunch. But anyway, we are going to answer a few more questions. First off, we got, do you write toward an ending you already know or do you find it along the way? So when I normally write and when I come up with an idea for a project, it is usually very clear to me how I want it to end. With every single project that I've worked on so far that I've kind of taken seriously and known that I want to put time towards, considering my first project, the project I'm working on right now, and future projects, I usually always know how it's going to end because the end is always the big emotional point for me. It's the entire reason that I'm writing a story. A big reason that I write stories is because I want to carry across a theme or an idea or a feeling, or I want to really be able to conceptualize and consolidate what it is like to be a human being. And because of that, endings have always been very important to me, so that is kind of why I go into it knowing the ending. I don't think I've ever started a project yet not knowing the ending. Does the ending change? It actually rarely changes. I feel like a lot of the events that go towards the ending change, some aspects of how the ending is carried out changes, but there's always just this one moment in my books that I can think of where I know that this is how this story is going to end. This is where these characters are going to end up. The next question we have is, do you structure your planning act by act or chapter by chapter? So I think this is hard to answer because it really depends on the project I'm working on. I find it very difficult to do chapter by chapter just because of how early I'm into my writing career, because I don't really know what it's going to take to convey a point, and I try to make my chapters around 2,500 to 4,000 words, and because of that and me not knowing how much it's going to take to convey a point, I don't really like to think in chapters. I don't really like to think in act by act either. I think kind of I do. I go along with plot and I think based on plot. Specifically with Project AOS, I go based on place. Because it is a journey book, it's very easy for me to think of where I am based on everything that's going to happen where they are. That isn't necessarily going to take place across one chapter, it could be multiple chapters, but I, for this project, specifically look into thinking about place. For our next question, how do you handle pacing in scenes that are more reflective or internal? So, I like to really slow things down when it comes to internal scenes, and I know that can be pretty difficult to try to figure out how you want that structured. The best way that I have been able to figure out pacing in a book is based on the actual writing of the book. How is my main character processing the events? Are they going through something really slowly because in the back of their mind they're thinking of something else, or it's very important to them what's happening? Is it that they're very confused and very disjointed, or something has caught them off guard so it happens a lot more fast? I basically pretend, even if I'm writing in third person, that I am in the head of this character. How is this scene or event going to affect this character? And then as they're reflecting, what are the things they're going to think about? How long are they going to spend mulling on this? It can also be very effective to use kind of, I don't want to say limited language, but to show pacing through shorter bits and chunks to show a passing of time and showing that it's taken a long time for them to be affected by this, or have them sit directly with them in the moment and really nail it down, really invest yourself in that scene. The more emotionally important an internal conflict is, the more time you should spend on it in your story. Another question is, how did you discover your voice as a writer? Did it evolve deliberately or naturally? So this is a very interesting question because my voice for my very first novel, which I did not finish, is very different from Project AOS. I have always considered myself someone who loves beautiful prose, who loves a darker, more academic aesthetic. I don't want to say dark academia because that's literally a clothes style, but Donna Tartt, that is something that has always been relevant to me, and I was struggling with that book because it was in first person, and I found it very difficult to convey what I was trying to convey in the way that I wanted it to be conveyed in a first-person setting. It's easier to do voice like that in third person, but I ended up having to stop that project, as I've already talked about before. But with Project AOS, my second project, there was a voice that just came out of nowhere for Project AOS. It was not a voice that I had written in previously. It was third person. It was very, I don't know if the gritty is the right word, but it's very descriptive. It gives lots of cultural details, and it's very, I don't want to say American, but like, my characters live in a place where like their culture and like American culture is a big impact, and so you get a lot of references. Then again, they're not real world references, they're references that matter in that world because the world is an alternate reality. But I really like that that voice is very, it's long sentence structure, it's punch after punch, it's a lot of metaphors, but they all relate to the characters themselves. And yeah, I think the voice for that story really just came out of me naturally. Then again, editing is really straining me right now, so it is gonna be a difficult one to edit because of how stream of consciousness that writing is, but I think it depends on the project, and you use different voices for different projects, but I think Project AOS was just the right story at the right time, and I feel like I really found my voice through that story. Our last question for out here before it gets too dark is, do you ever experiment with forms or styles outside your usual comfort zone? So yes, because of my situation as an English student, I'm given a lot of opportunities to experiment. I know that it isn't something that everyone has the time and ability to do, but I think that experimenting is so important. We did an exercise in last week's class where we just had 20 minutes, we just had to come up with a different way to tell a portion of our story. Maybe a different narrative voice, different narrative style, maybe more of a like meta perspective coming from on the outside. And it's very important to experiment, because even if those experiments aren't something that you end up using for that project, they're definitely beneficial for you to understand different ways your project could be told, and also different ways future projects could be told. So I think that styles and forms outside of your own thing is very important to do if you have the time. Then again, it's still important to stay true to you. Try to blend styles that you love with things that you know you already love and you already know, but also don't be afraid to put yourself out of your comfort zone. Anyway, those are the end of our questions for out here. We are going to head back in and answer the last few. Okay everyone, so sorry the location literally didn't change that much at all, but it is dark outside, so I really don't have anywhere else to go except this room. So we're gonna do the rest of the questions in here. But our first question is, how do you write about characters who you might know little about? Both internal, very different personality, upbringing from you, and external, they are an astronaut and you've never been an astronaut, or they grew up in a war-torn place and you've never been a soldier. So I think that this is absolutely a great question, and I think in a way you almost answered it yourself, because you, I don't, and because I think that this is a great question because it is what a lot of writers tend to struggle with or may struggle with, but I think that you frame this question in a way that you can almost answer it through the question, which I think is really, really cool. But if you think about it, so you have a character that is different internally than you. They don't have the same personality. They think differently than you. They have different motivations than you. They're a lot more out there than you, or they're a lot more introverted than you. The way that you're going to connect to that character, and writing is connection, you need to be able to connect to your characters and kind of understand what they're going through, is the external stuff. So maybe you have a character that is different from you internally, but they have external similarities to you. Maybe they're interested in the same things as you. Maybe they grew up in a similar, like, You literally just said different upbringing. Never mind. But like, maybe you've been in similar situations. The character has reacted differently, but you've been in similar situations, so you kind of know what it's like. You know what it feels like. And though they may take different things from it, you're able to connect to them in that way. And then when you have characters that are different from you externally, have them connect to you in internal ways. Have them connect to you in personality, in ways that they've been brought up that are difficult, or ways that you can connect to them through relationships and stuff like that. Really, just if you have something that you can't relate to them internally, find an external thing you can relate to them on. If you have a character you can't relate to externally, find something internal you can relate to them on. And then I think as a secondary response to this question, I know that sometimes there are going to be characters that are neither. I know that that happens. And I also know how important it is to really understand the internal aspects if you connect on the external, and the external if you connect on the internal. I think that research is so important. That is something that I have been trying to get better at. I think that it's very easy for us as writers to just jump into stuff. It is easy for us to world build. It is easy for us to design a world. But going into researching how people react to things is something that I don't do a lot. I have been trying to do more. I'm gonna admit that I need to do better, because I have characters that are dealing with really intense things that I have never gone through. And so throughout this process, I have tried to make an effort. Like I said, I need to do better. I'm probably going to consider that a draft 3 thing, but I will do this before it's published. I will not let it go into print without me figuring this stuff out, because I think it's important that you understand where they're coming from. But I have one of my characters, I feel like that's a spoiler. And while I have bits and tidbits of information from things that I found of people that have dealt with similar things, little details of how this has affected their lives, it is nowhere near enough, and it will never be, because I have never set foot in that person's shoes. So I think approaching it from a perspective knowing that there is a lot you need to do to get there, and my book I will be going through drafts and drafts until I get it right, until I'm able to capture the way these characters feel, because it is so important. Because someone is going to read your book that is in a situation that your character's in, that has gone through something your character has gone through, and needs to be able to find solace in that character. So yeah, as my answer, it is important to be able to relate to them in some way, but if you can't, research is going to be so helpful. Also reading, you can read characters that you may feel like have a similar personality as your character and see how they react to things. But yeah, just really do your research, and there will always be some way for you to connect it. So find that and really dig into that. Our next question is, what is a rule in writing and storytelling you think writers can but will find excruciatingly hard to break? I don't know how to answer this question, because there are a lot of rules in writing. I think, okay, I might resend this answer later because I haven't thought through it as much as the other ones, but I think a big thing is plot structure. I think when we all go into plot structure, we really just need help, because we don't know what we're doing, we're young, and so we go on resources like Save the Cat, for act story structure, different forms of act story structure. And while all of the story structures are great, there is something that comes into it where it can be repetitive over time in media if you feel like the same story is told over and over again. And I feel like it can be so hard for writers to, I don't want to say trust themselves, but to be able to come up with how their story is going to come out in a way that is successful if they feel like it doesn't follow story beats and stuff like that. And I feel like there can be stories that don't follow story beats, that don't follow commercial, conventional story structure, that seem like they wouldn't sell, that really follow more profound ways of writing, that I feel like if people break that, it can be so successful if done in the right way, and it'll be really hard to do because it's so hard. We've been trained from a young age on stories. We know how stories work. Beginning, middle, end, conflict. All of these things happen in certain ways, and we know what it feels like to watch a movie. We know what it feels like to read a book. but finding ways you can kind of like subvert structure in your story. It doesn't work with every story. Like I said, if the act story structure works with your story, it works with your story. That is the way your story is meant to be told. But if it doesn't follow that, that is okay. You can try to figure it out. You can try to figure out different ideas. Push, discipline yourself, look for different ways, experiment. But if at the end of the day it follows something else, go that direction, because we can't have all stories be the same. We need difference, we need new ideas, and you can offer that through your story. Last but not least, we have one more question. It is, what were some of your most significant takeaways from your classes this year? What do you plan to incorporate moving forward? So, the biggest thing that I've learned, and if you watched one of my earlier videos, you know this, is that I have always been a big proponent of you don't have to follow show, don't tell. And I think that that is because I really didn't understand what show, don't tell means. This is because there would be situations where it would be all the more powerful to just say something like it is, to just say it outright. Especially at end of chapters, it's good to just leave it with a line. But I think it was because I didn't understand what show, don't tell means, and I had a false perspective of it. I thought that show was like pretty prose and lots of descriptions, and tell was just saying it. But that is not what show, don't tell is, and I think that that is a big thing I've learned in my writing fiction class. Show, don't tell, there's a situation to tell, there's a situation to show, and they both have emotional impact. But what show, don't tell is really hinting at is that your story needs to have depth. When you are trying to build a narrative, when you are trying to get people and readers invested in your story, you need to say something, imply another. And you can't always do this, it's impossible, but when you are describing something, say your character is sad, you could say, so-and-so is sad. Or you could say, so-and-so looked out the window. Describe that scene without mentioning the sadness, and see how that scene is told. See if the reader can feel the sadness. And I think that that is where power comes through, is when you are talking about one thing, it should always have another layer to it. It should always have something that is being implied. If you're trying to world build, you shouldn't just explain the world. You should just talk through your character's brain and do their dialogue and do the things they encounter. And through that, we'll be able to experience the world rather than you just telling us what it is. It's the difference between those two things, having depth, and I think this goes back to what I said earlier with what makes writing good writing, is that good writing has depth. It has multiple meanings. It has multiple interpretations. It has complexity and nuance in feeling. There's never just one note. It's always complex because we as humans are complex. So I think that that is a big thing that I've learned. Another big thing that I've learned, and this isn't strictly craft, but I still think it's interesting, is that I've written and read, well, not written, I have read a lot of short stories. And as a writer who is working on a novel, I don't read a lot of short stories. I feel like our world and what we consume is not in the short story form right now, which is honestly kind of sad, because short stories are so good because you are able to read a story, you are able to get to know a character, see them struggle, see them succeed or fail, and you are able to do that in just a few pages. And I think that learning the ability to do that, learning how to write a short story, is so beneficial to me writing a novel, because it helps me see the overarching structure of what a story should look like. I've always found it hard to write short stories because they're so small and there's not a lot of space, but it makes you understand how to be more concise, how to know what to tell the reader, what not to tell the reader. And even though a novel you're going to have so much more space, it's going to be so much better if you use that space in a good way, if you use it in a way that is concise, in a way that doesn't have filler, in a way that is just exactly what it needs to be. But I think that writing short stories has been very beneficial. I've read a lot of sci-fi, a lot of literary leaning fiction, a lot of genre, and just reading a wide range of genres, reading consistently, like 4 stories a week, short stories, has been really helpful and really beneficial. So I think those are the biggest things I've learned so far. Just every story, all good writing should have depth. If you're telling something, you're showing another. If you're showing something, you're telling the reader something. Just think of it that way and restructure the way you think about it. I don't know, maybe I was the only one who was confused about show don't tell, because it took me literally so long to understand 3-act structure. I didn't understand it until the Ellen Brock video where she explains it in quarters. So maybe I'm just late on the game, but I think those are the biggest thing I've learned. Just the importance of depth and the importance of reading, especially short form fiction. But anyway, we have reached the end of the video. I wanted to give you guys a quick writing update if you made it to the end. So I have actually gotten and heard back about my thesis. I have talked to the professor I mentioned in my first week of school video a while ago, and I'm going to be working on Project AOS for my thesis. That means that I am on a deadline outside of myself. I need to finish draft 2 by November 24th, hand that in, as hopefully finish it, but if I don't, I just need to send in what I have, but I need to finish it. Oh my goodness, I've been working on this book forever. But I'm going to send that in, I'm going to get notes back from that professor. It is going to be great to get feedback from someone who has written books, from someone who has read a lot, from someone who is knowledgeable and who has a lot of understanding of how stories are told, and I will get those notes back. I am also going to look into getting beta readers. I've always wanted to get beta readers, but it'll be kind of different because I'll ask for feedback, but I may already be working on the book based on my timeline. I will be working on draft 3 of my book for my final thesis of my English degree so I can graduate with honors, and that will be, I don't know when that's due. It'll probably be like April, May. I don't know off the top of my head. That's far ahead, but that is also coming up. But that means that this book is getting even closer to being done. My goal is to just get this book as close as it can to being query ready, and I know that it's going to be hard, it's going to be a lot, but overall, that's kind of the news. I'm very excited to get to work on it. I really need to get feedback from other people, but it's been hard because of how much I care about the universe and the world building, and how much I don't want to share it because I don't want someone else to use it, but overall, I'm really excited. But yeah, that is our quick writing update. Thank you again to everyone who asked questions. This was so fun. I would love to do specific craft videos in the future, and I have ideas for some. So let me know if that's something you'd be interested in. If you made it to the end of this video, comment down below the pin emoji. That is such a basic writing thing, but yeah, the pin emoji. And if you have any more questions for me, definitely let me know in case I do another video like this in the future. Like I was saying, I'm so grateful for those of you that ask questions, and I'm grateful for all of you that stay till the end of the video. I can't wait to see you guys in the next one, and this is your reminder that you can write that book. Bye!